You know they say you've got to break a few eggs to make an omelet? Well, whoever came up with that saying probably stopped after making breakfast. Because when you're out in the world inventing some groundbreaking inventions, things don't always go as planned. And before you know it, your success story turns into a Final Destination movie. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll be really happy you just sit around and watch YouTube all day. Here are 9 inventions that killed their own inventors. Number 9, the Titanic. This giant behemoth of metal was responsible for taking tons of lives, including the genius designer behind it who hailed it as the biggest, most unsinkable structure on the planet. The design and the mechanics were all planned by a man called Thomas Andrews. According to him, this ship was going to make history. Boy, that statement didn't age well, did it? Almost like Thomas himself. What? Too soon? It's been 100 years. Now, credit to good old Thomas here. The ship had like 16 watertight compartments. He probably thought there was no way things could go wrong after that, right? Well, knock knock. Who's that? Mother Nature, bitch. Turns out that no matter how strong of a structure you make, nature is still hella scary. So, even with all his preparation, Thomas didn't see that iceberg coming. Even though the Titanic just scraped against it, the damage was still massive. Not 1, not 2, but a whopping 5 supposedly watertight compartments went kaboom.
Bruh.
Realizing what had happened, Andrews grimly estimated that they had about 3 hours before the whole ship sank to the bottom of the ocean. And you know the saddest part? In the end, it wasn't even the steel used that caused all this to happen. Nope, it was the rivets which couldn't withstand the blow. Take that as a lesson, kids. Don't cheap out on rivets, I guess. You know what? Better yet, just don't go making large ships and sailing them out to the sea. Nothing good has ever been found out there. Okay, except maybe shrimp. Those things are delish. In the end, Thomas ended up going down with the ship he created, proving once and for all that the only thing titanic at sea is the force of nature. Number 8, the Titan submersible. Well, looks like the Titanic is back for round 2. This ship is pretty much the only one in history to somehow kill even more people 100 years after it sank. And here's how. A bunch of folks decided to hop into a metal death box headed straight towards the sunken Titanic. The Titanic submersible was made by Stockton Rush, a man of many ambitions and the biggest Thomas Andrews fanboy out there. You see, Rush was on a mission that even James Cameron would envy. He wanted to go all the way down to the remains of the Titanic. Why? Who knows? But billionaires tend to do weird shit. We all know that. He even convinced some other wacky rich folks that this was a good idea. But I think you know the rest, right? It was all over the news. Despite making progress early on, Rush and the gang of other unlucky chaps suddenly vanished into thin air on June 18th. The US Navy, Coast Guard, and even James Cameron couldn't find them. When James can't find you, you know you're long gone. This is a guy who somehow found people who liked his Avatar movies. And well, sadly, on June 22nd, the Coast Guard finally found out what happened to the Titan submersible. It ended up imploding, just a little distance away from the Titanic itself. Rush and all the people on board with him, they turned into metallic goo, thousands of meters under the sea. Now, before you start feeling too bad for Rush, consider this. The vessel was piloted with an Xbox controller. I mean, if your ship's controls look like they belong in a teenager's game room, you're pretty much setting sail on a mission that could be doomed by an accidental Red Bull spill or a rage quit. Number 7, the parachute. In a world full of scientists telling you to back your work up with research and proof, you should be like Franz Reichelt, who was also known as the Flying Tailor. Now, you might be wondering, just who is Franz? Well, he was a quirky little guy with a big dream, to fly. So, like any sane individual, instead of testing out his cool device, which most of us know today as the parachute, he decided he'd just climb to the tippy top of the Eiffel Tower. What could go wrong, right? Reichelt jumped, and do you want to guess what happened next? Did he survive and go on to become a famous parachute seller? Nuh-uh. Did he walk away with some injuries and abandon his passion completely? Nope. He died. The guy died. He jumped from the top of the Eiffel Tower. What did you expect? Poor old Reichelt was a tailor by trade who must have thought he was starring in a Disney movie, believing his tailor-made outfit would magically sprout wings once he took the leap. Because that's the only reason why I think someone would decide to choose the top of the Eiffel Tower to test a janky piece of tech that hasn't even been researched. You want to know the sad part? Around the same time, the Aero Club de France was hosting a parachute design contest. But instead of just submitting his design like a regular Joe, Reichelt decided to go all in. And well, he definitely gained a pair of wings after that, taking him straight to heaven. Number 6, the very first flying car. Now, I know what you're thinking. Flying cars? When did that happen? Well, the reason you're hearing about it in a video about inventions that killed their inventors is precisely why we still don't have these. You can thank the dynamic duo of Henry Smolinski and Harold Blake for that. Their real cool yet fatal idea was that you could drive your car to an airport, attach the wings and rear propulsion unit, and then fly to your destination, where you would then detach the flight components and drive away. Because why sit in traffic with all the suckers when you could fly right over them, right? So they set out to make the world's first flying car. They were engineering geniuses who combined a Cessna Skymaster with a good old Ford Pinto. They even gave their creation a stellar name inspired by a star in the Big Dipper, the AVE Mizar. Little did they know, their little star was about to burn out. In 1973, they took off from Ventura County Airport in California, ready to show the world the magic of their flying car. But before they could fly me to the moon, their plane car, or was it a car plane, disintegrated in midair. Number 5, the rotary printing press. Heard of William Bullock? Yeah, he's kind of a big deal in the printing scene, a name that any self-respecting nerd would probably drop because it's the kind of trivia only nerds know. Like me. Before this guy stepped up, printers could print about 250 sheets an hour. In 1863, he swooped in with his rotary printing press, blasting through paper like nothing, cranking out up to 10,000 sheets an hour. But here's where it gets real. The very invention that shot him to fame also seriously messed him up. While tweaking his machine, Bullock got his leg caught up in the gears, mangling his foot beyond recognition. He tried to tough it out, but gangrene is no joke, and he lost that battle just a few days later. It's kind of wild, right? The dude who sped up the world of printing ended up getting caught in the very wheels he set in motion. I'll never look at a newspaper the same way again. Number 4, radioactivity. When it comes to groundbreaking discoveries, it's kinda hard to beat Mary Curie. After all, she's the person who discovered radium and polonium and coined the term radioactivity. And I think you can already guess where this one's going. All the time Marie spent studying radioactivity added up. Her insides must have become her very own Sharon Boyle because, damn, things didn't go well for her in the end. All that poking around in radioactive elements meant that by the age of 66, she was completely drowning in aplastic anemia, which is basically when your body cannot make any new blood cells. That's a not-so-friendly side effect of radioactive substances. But hey, for her sacrifice, she got not just one Nobel Peace Prize, but 2. That's kind of cool, right? I mean, not as cool as being alive, but you get the idea. Number 3, plutonium. Speaking of scientists engaging in risky endeavors, let's discuss Louis Slotin, a physicist known for his critical role in the Manhattan Project and his fatal radiation experiment with plutonium. Back in May 1946, Slotin decided he was going to be brave, a little too brave. The guy decided he was going to carry out a risky maneuver known as tickling the dragon's tail. What's that, you ask? Well, it's a technique that involves bringing the core of a nuclear bomb right to the edge of an explosion. Yes, that's right, the guy straight up tried to edge a nuclear bomb. What's wrong with scientists? When the experiment fully happened, witnesses saw a flash of blue light that lit up the room, a surefire sign that a whole bunch of radiation was unleashed into the air. I've seen enough Breaking Bad to know that this couldn't have been a good thing. Turns out Slotin had received 4 times the lethal dose of radiation, enough to give him what doctors call 3-dimensional sunburns.
Bruh.
That's 3 times the ouchie. His body just couldn't handle the heat, and within days, his organs shut down, and Slotin went down as the history's most unsuccessful edgelord. Number 2, biohacking. Next up on our list of inventors who probably should have stuck to the drawing board is Alexander Bogdanov. This guy was a jack of all trades, a doctor, a philosopher, and apparently a part-time vampire. Bogdanov was obsessed with the idea of blood transfusions and the ultimate fountain of youth. He thought swapping some plasma could keep you young and vibrant. Kind of like today's biohacker Brian Johnson, who's trying so hard to reverse aging, he's going to end up looking like a zygote. The dude looks weird, right? He's less Benjamin Button and more Twilight Zone. Did he learn nothing from Dorian Gray? Anyway, back to the original biohacker. Bogdanov started trading blood with younger folks, hoping to catch some of their youthful vibes. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. After a series of blood swaps, Bogdanov tapped into the wrong vein. He received a transfusion with some seriously incompatible blood. And, well, let's just say he didn't get the eternal youth package he signed up for. And that's how Bogdanov, in his quest to outsmart Mother Nature, ended up giving his final bow. So, for all the modern-day alchemists out there trying to turn back time, take note, not all hacks are upgrades. Number 1, train car. Imagine a train. Got it? Cool. Now, imagine a car. Combine them together, and you get the train car. Wow, what a cool and unique idea. Well, that's what Valerian Abakovsky thought. He was a chauffeur with some serious connections to top Russian officials. Valerian cooked up a scheme that was equal parts brilliant and bonkers, a propeller-powered train car dubbed the Arrow Wagon. Now, let's pause for a moment and let that sink in. A train car with a propeller. I'm not even an expert, and I can tell this thing should have stayed in the drafts, but it gets worse. Abakovsky managed to convince not just one or two, but half a dozen high-ranking officials to climb around his death-defying contraption for its very first voyage. And so, they set off on a 121-mile journey from Moscow to Tula. Surprisingly, this thing actually managed to stay on track for a bit. But problems arose on the return trip. Physics decided it hadn't had enough and decided to derail Valerian's plans, both figuratively and, well, very, very literally. And just like that, Valerian went down with his invention. In any case, from the Titanic to the ambitious train car, those were just some of the inventions that killed their inventors. Know of any that I missed? Let me know in the comments, and as always, like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell.